Okay, we're here again. Good day to you all. Good day to all the people in the 7 continents of the world. Yes, it is State of the Nation on the Atlanta Discourse channel. Well, you all know the largest concentration of black people anywhere on the planet still remains Nigeria, still lagging behind in so many areas. So that's why today we keep analyzing on how Nigeria can get out of the current morass. So today I have again with me Professor Okedinachi Pat Utomi. You all know him. Fantastic guy, great guy, erudite scholar, man of the people. He says it the way it is. No holds barred, irrespective of whooks, oxes, God. That's why we like it at Atlanta Discuss, because it's always no old bear. Prof, welcome once again to Atlanta Discussion.
Thank you so very much. It's such a great pleasure to be able to join you.
We love having you too. We love having you. So, Prof, let's just cut the chase. There's been a lot of talk. I know we've discussed in the past about shadow cabinet and all that. So I want to know, what motivated you to form I know you've explained why you did it and all that, but so what motivated you to form a shadow cabinet? What specific goals do you want to achieve with that initiative?
Well, thanks for raising it again. But, I guess the judge hasn't ruled yet, but they don't want to talk about these things.
I was following the judgment too, so that's why I asked.
It's amazing that many of us committed to building a great nation when we were young. We were so passionate about it. And so our thinking kept going to what would make Nigeria better, what would make Nigeria a great place, what would make our children proud. And part of it is about institution building. If you look at all the analysis of societies that have done well through human history, the consensus is around strong institutions. Whether you come at it from the point of the historian, and I can cite several great historians who have written about what has separated countries that have done well from those that have failed. Whether it's the British guy, Neil Ferguson, on and on. Institutions. You turn to political scientists. Whether it's my head of department, who became the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in economics, Eleanor Lynn Ostrom, from my time, is about strong institutions. How essentially, in her particular research area, scarce resources are managed by communities. You turn to sociology, economic historians, whether it's Douglas North, you can just go on and on. But there is a consensus that institutions matter. How do institutions evolve? They evolve, and that's the most critical thing about institutions, that they evolve. And they evolve, as Douglas North, very rightly points out in his seminal work, out of contestations on issues by competing mindsets. And everybody eventually agrees to boundaries, a level playing field. And that reduces uncertainty. One of my early books from 1998, which won, incidentally, the Abiola Prize, this is June 12th season. My book, Managing Uncertainty, Competition and Strategy in Emerging Economies, won the Abiola Prize for the best academic text written in Nigeria in 1998.
Oh, wow.
That book explored institutions, private sector, economic performance. So you see how the contestation, I use as favorite example, the foreign exchange market and how it evolved in Nigeria. Manufacturers argue that, they are the privileged sector that are creating jobs, they should just give them allocation. The traders from the Chamber of Commerce say, no. We too, the things that we are bringing in is helping the economy. Don't give special allocation. Everybody was playing their own games until eventually it became clear that whether you favored manufacturers or you did it this way, the people who are actually profiting are the middlemen who are getting the import licenses and selling. Then both the traders and the manufacturers came to a certain agreement and became what is so-called the organized private sector and demanded that price determine foreign exchange and not bureaucratic allocation. That's how the foreign exchange market in Nigeria grew. And that's an institutional development. Now, how can we then build governmental institutional strength? We know that Nigerian politicians, unfortunately, the way that politics evolved, many of people who are there didn't go into politics because they wanted their name in history for a certain bill or for, a certain way of ensuring that the weak are not left, or whatever big ideas that normally propel people into public life. Most of them are bread and butter people who thought because we have abused policy or policy arena, such that it's profitable for those who are there. It's not only in Nigeria, but Nigeria's case is really peculiar. So many people enter politics because of their material benefits that they are pursuing, which should not be what politics is about. It's about their service to advance the common good. And the real benefit from this is immortality. When you serve your people well, you do things that change lives for people for good, you will live forever. Because people were talking about you generations after you are gone. And so on and so forth. So I looked at the fact that Nigerian politicians were not offering opposition. Well, I just heard Le Momodu say we've slipped into civilian dictatorship. That's precisely what can happen when you don't have a political class that understands the meaning of opposition. So after the messy elections of 2007, I was thinking, what would be the best way to help this democracy grow? And the idea of creating a shadow government, a shadow cabinet, a shadow team. Name doesn't mean anything. You can choose whatever you want to call it, label. So I called up opposition figures. Chief Olufalaye was one of them, and said, this is what I want to do. Chief Olufalaye said, it's a fantastic idea, but I have a problem. Nigerians, the opposition will start fighting now. How many people do we have in the cabinet? Is it this party that did this? That this will cause you a problem that you are trying to solve.
Okay.
So I said, oh my God, again, Nigerian problem. I let it for a while. I said, no, this democracy is not working. We're not getting seasoned thinking about specific issues and policies from people who have made that area their territory and therefore have built up knowledge to be able to say to government, no, this is a better way of doing this. So I brought together a group of friends of mine, literally speaking, who were in different opposition parties. Now, as I like to remind people, I have not seen Dr. Leke Piton for more than 10 years. But he was the very first, I'm just saying this to give an idea of how long ago we started this.
Okay.
I'm not for 10 years, but he was the first shadow health person in the shadow cabinet we formed. So it will give you an idea of when the idea of the shadow cabinet went into place. Now, at the time that I was putting this together, I got invited to Abuja by the late President Yar'Adua. It was a Friday. And I like to tell the story with its fullest details, so all those who were there will remember.
Go ahead, sir.
On a Friday morning, I arrived with a friend at the villa at the invitation of President Yar'Adua. Very polite, wonderful man. When David Edevier, who was principal secretary to the president, Yar'Adua, sent me a note that I was around. President Yar'Adua left the meeting and came out to meet me and said, he was in this meeting, but I should just give him 15 minutes to round the meeting up. And then that will go to the residence, because what he wants to discuss with me is not office conversation. He knows that it will take hours. So he wants us to just be relaxed and talk about it. So I said, no problem. We finished the meeting shortly after. An outcome from the meeting turns out it was a meeting of the economic team with several of my friends on it. Remy Babalola, Steve Oronsai, Emeka Eze. They all came and said hello to me. And then they left. Then I went to the residence. Then President Yar'Adua went to say his Friday prayers, came back, dismissed everybody in the residence. And I can tell you the order in which they left. The last two people who left were Yar'Adua, the managing director, group managing director of NNPC. His name was Yar'Adua.
I remember.
And then Michael Anduaka, who was then Attorney General. He was the last person that left. And then President Yar'Adua ushered us into a small room and said to me, Professor, what is the problem with Nigeria? I said to him, are you sure you want to listen to me talk about that? Because I can go on for 5 hours on that matter. He said, I have all the time. I've closed work. Before 12 noon, I've closed work today because of you. You can take anytime you want till midnight. You can talk.
Oh, God.
So I said, okay. After nearly 2 hours, and he was listening. He didn't fall asleep. He was just listening. After nearly 2 hours, I decided, okay, I've said enough. I stopped. And President Yar'Adua said to me, you see, that's why people say few people have the kind of depth of understanding of Nigeria that you have. It's clear. It's evident. I can see it. What I can't understand is why you are outside instead of inside the government solving those problems. I said to him, well, you know that I got inside government very, very early in my life. At 27, I was in the Shagari government. But I learned some lessons from that experience that makes me reluctant to rush into government. I told him the story of how, as a young person in government, idealistic as you can be at 27, and a PhD, you know, two things are dangerous. A PhD, which means that you have tried to understand the depths of problems, and you know your head is burning like fire, and then you are young. So both of them made me come into the government like fire, like solve all these problems. And I said, I had a very nice man called Asambu, who was Federal Permanent Secretary, who I had to work with. Every time I talked about how to solve problems, Asambu would say, doctor, if you do this, you will step on this person's toe. You do that, you will step on that person's leg. Every day, I will not be able to go to sleep, trying to come up with something that will not step on any toe or leg or feet.
Wow.
So one day I said to Mr. Bo, is it possible to do anything that will not step on something? He laughed. This kind of knowing smile of a civil servant, like, okay, we have you where we want you. You know, you really can't do what you want. And I had two outlets. You know, I had access to the vice president, who I discussed with all the time. When I shared those same ideas with the vice president, he would just get very excited. Yes, come on, let's see how we can do it. And then the president, that was a really nice one. Because, you know, President Shagari was a smoker. But nobody knew that. He didn't smoke in public.
Yeah, he didn't.
He didn't smoke inside the office of the president because he had too much respect for the office to smoke in it. So every time he wanted to smoke, he would come out of his office into that barracks, into that one open area. From my window, I would always see him come out. And I'll come down and say to Abba Dabo, Chief Press Secretary, whose office was underneath my own, I said, Abba, let's go and chat with the president. And so I would share some of these ideas. And you see that the man, electric, even he, as calm as he was, would see the ideas. So I used to wonder, why can't this permanent secretary see the thing that these big men are seeing? So I made one decision, fortunately or unfortunately, however you see it. Shortly after there was a coup d'etat.
Well, yeah.
And we we left office. And I said to myself, I will not go into public office again until I am certain that I have enough power to do the things I want to do. Which is why you notice people say to me, come and go to Senate. Years ago, my friend Femi Falana said I should come and run for Senate from Lagos. I shouldn't go to any Delta or anywhere because these identity politics is ruining Nigeria. It's Lagos. We know you. Everybody knows you. We know what you can deliver. So come and run for Senate from Lagos. I said, me, no. If I am going to government, I'm going to go to where I have enough power to influence changing things and touching people's lives. So to return to President Yar'Adua, I said to him that, I thanked him for his invitation for me to join his cabinet, but that look, I have just founded a shadow team, a group of friends of mine from opposition parties. And our goal is to be able to meet and discuss policy issues and focus on how to transmit this to the electorate to educate them and to make it available to the government. I said, I may be in opposition, but I am a patriot. You can assume complete access to me anytime. Call me at 5 a.m. Call me at 1 a.m. Anytime you want, just call me and have the benefit of my opinion on anything you want. He said to me, that's not enough. You can have more impact from inside of government.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He said, I said to him, I agree with you, but let me tell you, I wear many hats, my training in policy economics, my training as a political scientist, my training as this. As a political scientist, I can tell you that one of the big challenges of Africa is the idea of the cooperative state in post-colonial Africa. And the cooperative state basically tries to find people who have strong voices of dissent and suck them in. When it sucks them into the government, it then squelches that voice, and that voice is lost to society. I said, I don't want that to happen to me. I will give him an example from Nigeria. I said, there was a time when people were struggling to be president of NMA, Nigerian Medical Association, president of Nigerian Bar Association, because the cooperative state had made it a point to try and take the MDA president and make him Attorney General.
The Attorney General. And the NMA president as Minister for Health.
Minister of Health. I said, there's a gentleman called Emmanuel Unsang. Dr. Unsang was a radical president of the NMA. And then he was brought into government. And he was used to damage the NMA.
Wow.
By the government. The day he was dropped, those who know him, who were around, said he was crying like a baby. Because he had no way to return to. He had burnt his bridges with his colleagues. And when I was pro-chancellor of Edo University, I remember some discussion going towards that. And the provost of the College of Medicine, this was 30 years after, was still so bitter against Emmanuel Unsang.
Wow.
Yeah. So I said to President Yar'Adua, I don't want to be one of those sucked in by a cooperative state. If I'm going to be in government, I want to have real power and set clear targets of what I would like to do to affect people's lives, and have, if I'm not the main man making the decision, which is why I ran against you for president, I will have enough of the confidence and trust of the person who is president, such that my whole work can be measured, and I'll be judged on account of it, not from blockages in the system. President Yar'Adua said, okay, I hear you, but I can assure you that I will give you my full support when you come into the cabinet, and you will have your freedoms, So I said to him, look, okay, why don't we meet halfway? You look for 7 good people. You can take all these your PDP people who want to go and give contracts to be minister of this, minister of that. Put them on those places. Minister of Transport. Let them be giving contract. But some core areas of government that set the direction of a country. Have those 7 good people. Give them guarantees of your support. And then tell them that they have me available to sit with them anytime to give them benefit of my opinion, my input, and all of that. By the way, the person who was with me, this friend of mine, is not fair, I will mention his name, kept saying, Your Excellency, don't mind him, we will make him accept. Don't mind him, we will make him accept. Don't worry, we will make him accept. Yar'Adua very nicely kept brushing him aside and returning to my objections. And so when I raised this thing of 7 people that I can make myself available to work with, he said, okay, good idea, 7 good people. But why don't you go and find those 7 good people and add yourself to them, 8 of you, I will absorb everybody into the cabinet and give you my full support.
Wow.
I mean, at that point, you couldn't say, he has covered all the grounds that you had, had
so
problem.
Escape route, yeah.
So I said, okay, let me go back to Lagos and find 7 names and send to you. So that's how our conversation ended. The person who came with me kept saying, Excellency, he keeps talking every time about education and healthcare being central to development. I know that everybody thinks of him, let him go to economic planning and all of this. Just give him education. He can always be a member of the economic team and all of that. Let him transform education and let us see what will happen to Nigeria. So, anyway, Yar'Adua then said to me, okay, he's waiting for my list. I went back to Lagos. I prepared the list. And I gave it to Steve Oronsai. I never saw Yar'Adua again. Of course, a few weeks later, he took ill and then ultimately he died.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know whether my list ever reached him. I took it for granted that it reached him and he looked at 1 or 2 of the people who were terrorists on the list and said, no, I don't want these people. That's what I thought, or I assumed. But years ago, and I can say this publicly, I mean, I've been very shy of saying it publicly. Many years later, I was having a conversation with the Sultan. And this kind of came up, and the Sultan laughed. He said, you don't know the villa. The man, I think, went to his grave thinking you snubbed him.
Oh, wow.
I felt so pained.
Oh, wow.
I felt really pained.
Wow.
Because I never really thought of it that way. So the question remains, did he ever really see my list? Anyhow,
wow.
We continued keeping this shadow cabinet going. We converted Patito's gang into its outlets. A few of them, of members of the cabinet, appeared on Patito's gang. And whenever we reached conclusion on certain issues, whether it's power or this, we would bring that issue to Patito's gang and discuss.
Okay, so, sir, my next question to you is, do you think the government's reaction is justified? I mean, from all you've said so far, I mean, you don't mean any harm. These are just patriotic gestures that any sincere leader or government should even embrace because it gives them options to look at, and it's done in most developed democracy. But overall, do you think the actions are justified? They went to court and all that. What do you think? Are they overreacting or they're within the ambit of the law?
I guess that question is probably best answered by them. I don't know what they considered. From my point of view, I'm even more scandalized by the fact that this government were the ones who said under Jonathan that they will form a parallel government.
True.
In Jesus' house in Washington.
I remember.
Friend said that clearly. So for such people to come and see something that is very, unlike what they said they will do, and consider it treasonable and all of that, just shocks me. It almost makes me begin to think of what Dele Momodu said about our sliding into a civilian dictatorship is worrisome.
Wow.
And I tell you, very frankly, my current critique of Nigeria is not a critique or criticism of any government, whether it's Bola Tinubu or whoever it is. My current criticism of Nigeria is a critique of the crisis of elite. Nigeria's elite have disappointed greatly.
Wow.
Nigeria's elite really have lived France. Remember Frantz Fanon's famous statement about the fact that he's giving for every generation out of relative obscurity to find his mission.
Wow.
And either live it or betray it. Clearly, the Nigerian elite has not found its mission. More importantly, what mission it has not found, it has even managed to betray. You can imagine that educated people in Nigeria, influential people in Nigeria, who understand how much our country is suffering from the right things not happening. Look, in the last couple of weeks, I've just spent time reading books on why Africa has not done well. There's one by Robert Calderisi, who was a Canadian diplomat and World Bank official who served in several African countries, Tanzania, and so on and so forth. There's a chapter in that book which is titled, I think, Rule by Thugs. And he says that Africa's crisis is a crisis of thugs taking over the public sphere and preventing leadership from taking place. There's even another book that does worse than Kaderisi does. And that guy who was a World Bank person, as a professor of economics at Harvard, Robert Klitgard. The title of his book is Tropical Gangsters. This is how he describes African leaders. Tropical Gangsters.
Tropical Gangsters.
Which is the title of the book. I've just been reflecting on all of them and I said, if this is Africa's lot, if Africa is not making progress because the African state has been captured, the soul of the nations have been crushed by people who cannot empathize with the weak, the poor, the rural. Look, I was in Washington 2 days ago. I met with some friends, former World Bank and current officials of those Bretton Woods institutions. And one of them said, there's a new report that suggests that 75% of all who live in rural Nigeria are now in chronic poverty.
Oh, wow.
Now, can you imagine, and I'll go back to Robert Calderisi. Calderisi talks about, how people are starving in Africa and their legislators will be buying SUVs and big Mercedes-Benzes and their presidents buying new jets. And I just read, Calderisi's book was written in 2006, the same year as I wrote Why Nations Are Poor. And that's exactly what's happening in most African countries today. The so-called political class have so disconnected themselves from society that the pain of the people doesn't get to them. They don't even know the people exist. The people are just numbers. And they say things to make themselves sound good in politics, but they don't really believe or care about the people. I like to I use him as an example of how leadership responds to the environment. When Obasanjo was head of state, first time around, when I was a troublesome young youth corper, and gave him wahala, serious wahala, as a youth corper in New Breed magazine. Look, oil prices went south. Because oil prices went south, Obasanjo made a decision about cutting our coats according to our cloth, not according to our size.
Size, yeah.
He came down to Peugeot 504 as the official car of the head of state.
Hmm.
And everybody else went from there downwards. To think that in that same country where we had that experience, we can have a time of 75% chronic poverty in rural areas. Our legislators are buying all kinds of fancy cars for themselves. Our president is buying new befitting jets, even though we have a fleet of jets in the presidential fleet. Our yachts, this animal they call a car the beast, or something that costs $1 billion. I mean, God will be working overtime on Judgment Day. I can tell you that. He really will be working overtime on Judgment Day.
So let's talk about safety concerns now. I mean, the arrest concerns. I mean, you're abroad now. I mean, I'm sure you're going home sometime. Are you not worried that you could be arrested, or are you not scared for your life? Do you think there's cause for concern? And if there is, what have you done about it? Are you fighting back? Do you have lawyers representing you?
Well, there's been just so much concern about my safety from all kinds of corners, and that I see it as a classic example of my critique of the elite. People are so afraid of dying. I don't understand why.
Oh God.
I don't understand why they're afraid of dying.
Oh God.
Look, when this thing first happened, I had 4 close friends in the mortuary.
Wow.
One has been buried. There are 3. Oh no, second one is being buried tomorrow, yes. And there are 2 others. Is people so well given everything. My friend Ladi Olajide, who's not been buried, will be buried next week. Ladi, IT engineer, we grew up together. When everybody was abroad, it was just Ladi and I in Nigeria. Everybody took off. After he finished his engineering degree in the UK, he came home. So everywhere Ladi was with me. And where we saw our children grow up, Ladi is in the mortuary. Why should I be afraid of dying? Please. Chris Asoluka is in the mortuary. What is dying? God has given me more years. I'm going to be 70 in a few months. He's giving me more years. My father died at 52. Why should I be afraid of dying at 70? I think this is part of how the Nigerian elite has allowed Nigeria to. Of course, I'm not looking for death, but if it be the price, so be it. But to be very frank with you, not so much out of fear of death, but out of disgust for the Nigerian elite, I'm considering moving. I'm not coming to live in America, somewhere in West Africa, between Freetown and Aburi in Ghana, looking for a location.
Wow. Dakar is there.
Place that first of all, so I can fly and go to my beach. And secondly, English speaking. I'm not going to be doing business or anything. I won't disturb their environment. I'm just going to be one anonymous person in the community, sitting down, writing my books. The choice of Freetown and Aburi are driven by topography mainly. I once was in a retreat in Aburi, in a small bungalow, just actually looking down into the barracks where the Aburi Accord was signed in 1966. And I like the topography, and I think since I'm just going to be quietly sitting down writing my books or whatever, maybe this is a nice location to be in. Second is Dakar, it's Freetown, where my friend Taf Mustafa Njaye of Tap Africa Global is building a new estate. And I will just get one cheap small bungalow overlooking the Atlantic with the mountain behind me and just sit down peacefully there. So since Nigeria leads Nigeria to be a mess and a joke that the world laughs at, they can have it. I'm not talking about Tinubu or any government. the Nigerian elite. They want what we have. You know, you imagine that some people said to some of my friends, "What's wrong with that guy? He has a Messiah complex." When we started this whole thing, you see, these Tinubu guys will just kill him. And I said, kill. That would be nice. At least somebody will carry my sins. And I can go with peace into eternity.
Oh, wow. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that do you have sufficient public support for what you're doing? I mean, the shadow cabinet. And do you think Nigerians are aware enough? Do you think they appreciate the efficacy and the importance of what you're trying to do?
Well, if they don't know, starting it will at least increase their awareness. Okay, and that's what's important. That's why this is a process. I did an interview in Washington 2 days ago with a gentleman, a blogger, who incidentally used to work for the NDI. He worked on a program that brought a group of us to Washington in I think around 2000. I think Raymond Dekwesi, Hami Sushira, a number of us, to talk about democracy and debates. His name is Adebo. And we looked at this whole thing about a public awareness and why our democracy is where it is. And I said one thing to him. I said, you know, people talk about, this thing you're doing, has it achieved enough after all this? Is it worth it? You know, I said, you know, Western civilization, all these things we are enjoying in America, blah, 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 was shaped by the Christian movement. The Catholic Church essentially built Western civilization, let's be very honest and frank. And it did not happen like this. They were considered a renegade sect from among the Jews, hiding and getting killed, persecution for decades, centuries. After running back and forth, and they had not been crushed, 300 years. The Emperor Constantine finally gets converted. And what we know as Western civilization truly emerged from the work of those Christian renegades. So, looking at what has happened in Nigeria over the last 50 years of the struggle of people like myself and using it to judge whether it's worth doing, I think may not be adequate. Let us hope and pray that somehow, they say the civilizations are built on the blood of martyrs. Let us hope that whatever it is we do is a small contribution ultimately to getting it right for Africa, because Africa has suffered too much. George Aite was a professor of economics at American University when I was on sabbatical there in Washington many years ago. George and I used to talk, and George was so passionate and so angry with African leaders. George has gone, he's died. But every time I pick up a book, in fact, as I was looking at Kadarisi's book, I saw a quote from George, you know, ultimately his anguish and, you know, statements will be building blocks for an Africa where their leaders aren't corrupt tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah. So if, for example, President Tinubu calls you now, okay, I know he knows you very well, you know him very well, say, Pat, come, let's talk. I know some of these things you're saying, I know you're a patriot, blah, blah, yada, yada, yada. I need help. I really need help. I'm telling you, I need help. How, I mean, are you ready to engage with them if that opportunity comes? I mean, it might not be in the way Yar'Adua put it. I doubt if that will happen. But if the president calls you and say, look, Prof, I need help. Are you ready to help? Oh,
I'm ever,
engage. Let's just say engage. I mean, that's the part. Yeah.
yeah, I'm ever ready to talk. I'm ever ready to talk, but I will still be driven by principles. Just the way I was driven by principles when I talked with Yar'Adua. In fact, there's a professor, a Nigerian professor of history at Berkeley, who I'm actually working on a book project with now. When we had a conversation on this Yar'Adua thing, he shook his head. He said, "You are so principle driven." He said, "I can't think of many Nigerians who a president spends hours trying to persuade them to become members of his cabinet." And, you know, on the first talk, he said, "Oh, yes, sure. Yes, we can change the world." I said, "No, it's not because I'm special. It just God gave me the opportunity very early to find out what works and what does not work."
Wow.
And the grace to be principle driven and to say, look, this did not work, so I have to wait for something that works. It's not that I don't. Yes, I understand the point Cherry was making about you can make greater impact from inside. But many people have gone inside with that intention and made no impact and destroyed themselves. So
you had the Asombo experience, Asombo.
I had some experience.
But probably that's the best advice you ever got,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then look, they will like it, but it's not going to move. No traction.
Uh-huh.
So what role is the international community playing in all this? Do you think they will support it, or because people have been saying that it's an agent of the West, I'm sure it's not the first time you're hearing that. People always, like, I mean, you always give the Mahathir, the Anwar Ibrahim example, and Mahathir Mohamad at that time.
Yes.
But, yeah, so people are saying, oh, the Western days, they want to destabilize Nigeria. So what's the role of the West in this? Yeah.
I don't know what the role of the West is, but actually I'm hearing this for the first time. Thank God. These guys talk so much nonsense. I wish one person from the West. In fact, my fear is that if I push some of my ideas too much, people in the West may panic that this is another Traore kind of guy.
Oh God!
So I try not to.
The West does not want another Traore. Oh God! Oh, Prof. Wow.
Well, it's amazing.
So, I mean, you're gonna be 70 soon. I mean, you've always been there. You started young from your NYC days. You're still on the map. You're still writing. I know. I can bet now without you even telling me. I'm sure you're writing at least 2 books at the moment. So, but what are your future plans? Yeah, I mean, politically, you're going old. You're now an elder statesman, no doubt. So, what does the future hold for you? Do you still run for president, or something like that? We never know. This one, you want to go to Freetown. We won't allow you to go to Freetown.
No, I'm retiring next year.
Oh, God.
Once I turn 70, I'm out of this stuff. I can give anybody who wants advice. I will write my books. They want to read, they can read my books. My plan is eventually to spend more time in rural Nigeria, trying to help rural people. And if they don't agree, I'll go to Freetown.
Oh, God. So, from June 12th, I mean, clearly the freest and fairest we've had in Nigeria in history and all that. And it's June 12th season. Do we have any lesson learned? Have we learned anything from that experience? Are we better off? Our elections better? Well, Nigeria is, a democratic country. A lot of people will say, yes, it's like you said, Dele Momodu just said that we're in a civilian dictatorship. But have we learned anything from June 12th?
It is not fair to dismiss a huge historical phenomenon and say nothing was learned. Clearly, there are lessons. Obviously, everywhere and every time in history, you will have people who try opportunistically to corner power. I'm sure I've spoken with you on a past interview about the work that Joshua Green and co are doing at the Center for Moral and sorry for Moral Cognition at Harvard, and then I was significantly influenced by his book Moral Tribes, Emotion, Reason, and the Gap Between Us and Them. There will always be people who will try to take advantage of emotion and subvert rational public conversation. That the current arrangement in Nigeria is essentially propaganda governing. It's not peculiar. I mean, so when people show that when I compare it to Hitler, they're not looking at the technical points. Exactly that's the way Hitler emerged in Weimar, Germany. And Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, the great propaganda minister, drove things. I just worry that a culture that is obsessed with power rather than purpose can easily fall deeper and deeper into trouble. My hope is that we take some of the lessons of June 12th and use it to educate the next generation, because it's always more costly ultimately if you don't learn lessons. Or costly. People who are saying, this guy has a Messiah complex, all these useless Nigerian middle class people. In the book, Why Not? Citizenship, fascism, criminal hijack of politics in Nigeria, citizenship, state capture, crippling fascism, and the criminal hijack of politics in Nigeria. I made the point very clearly that the biggest tragedy of Nigeria is not the people who are grabbing power. It's the people who should be saying something, but who are waiting for their turn. They are complicit in the situation. People who can speak up and speak truth to power, mainly educated middle class people, the ones who allow ethnicity to overrun them, not because they are really necessarily tribalists, but they say, it's a Yoruba man. It means I can probably get contract more easily because I'm a Yoruba man. So let me shut up. What is wrong with that stupid person who is speaking up? Because they can't rationalize that it will come to them sometime. And that's how institutions evolve. That's why I'm not quarreling with any of these things. That's how ultimately they say, so Buhari has run the thing. It became a government of Fulanis. Bola Tinubu has run the thing. It's become a government of Yorubas. Maybe after one Igbo man or somebody make it a government of all Igbos. Say, wait a minute. Let's arrange government so that it doesn't matter who is head of state. All of us can live well. That's precisely how institution building takes place. So I fear for many things that are happening. I fear Nigeria might unravel. There are many. What pains me is that as I run into Nigerians, and there's so many dishonest people who will tell you, as I run into Nigerians, I can tell you the honest truth that 80% have given up on Nigeria. 80%. They've lost their Nigerian passport. I can tell you a story of a friend of mine. People went to him in Canada. We're not, they're not calling, they're not coming. So they said to him, look, okay, give us biggest number. Let's call him now. Why is he being like this? You have to build an island for them. This and you're here. So when they called Benga, so upset. He said, please talk to my dad. Let me put it clear to you. I have 3 visits to Nigeria left in my life. So Benga, takes the phone and says, Daddy, look, I have 3 visits to Nigeria left in my life. One is when you die to come and bury you. Two is when Momsi dies to come and bury her. 3 is when we come home to sell off all your things and come back to Canada.
Wow.
The father broke down and started crying.
Wow. And that's the story almost everywhere you go, actually.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, my last question. Yeah, I mean, it's what you said now just broke my heart because I can relate actually. I can relate. I have an issue like that going on in my house.
Sense of shame. Does it not make us feel a sense of shame that can be our story? Does it?
One of my boys plays soccer. So like, okay, if things work out for you and you have to pick between USA and Nigeria, it's Dad, what kind of question is that? That he's going to play for USA. I said, but I said, no, he's going to play for USA. That's where his talent was discovered. His coaches are in America. The people that motivated him are American. The facility, everything, So I just said, okay, let's see. Maybe when he grows up, he said, no, Dad, I'm telling you, I'll play for America. They discovered me. They did everything, and that's it. Well.
Yeah, it's a shame. A friend of mine, a doctor in Chicago, the daughter is the American shot put champion. I think she won the gold in the last Olympics.
Oh, wow.
Mother, father, both Nigerian-born doctors. Their daughter playing for the US. Not only is she a top athlete, she's top of her class. No.
Wow.
What we've lost as a country.
So let's talk about the coalition. The lot of talk going about coalition and all that. I know it's impossible for anybody in Nigeria today to want to build a coalition without them calling on you. They will always want to pick your brain, if they are serious people. And I'm sure there must have been an attempt. So my question on coalition is, do you think it's going to happen? And if it's going to happen, do you think it's what we need or it's just another merry-go-round? That'd be my last question.
The only thing about it is you have to look at Kenya's experience. At the time people are giving up on it can't happen, they will go around and come back. Ford happened and became successful. So I don't know. I cannot predict exactly what will happen, but I know that they are making effort. What they must do is prevent individual egos from taking over. They must look at ultimately, what does Nigeria want? If you have to be very honest with yourself, Nigeria wants the disappearance of the entire political class, really seriously. But you can't make that happen. But at least the old regime needs to realize that it's time to say farewell. Countries looking for younger people, looking for people. See, I use a simple illustration about, look when you wrote the book, A Singapore Story, from third world to the first, the Singapore story, which were actually his memoirs. If you read the book, you will find that there is hardly anything that Singapore did that Nigeria did not do. The only thing is that the results were different because of the kind of people who implemented them. Singapore's development was driven by false savings. Provident Fund, the pool savings there, in Nigeria, it was chopped. Housing fund in Nigeria, I don't know where the thing is. In Singapore, HDB, the Housing Development Board of Singapore, was a major driver of those industrial estates for what they became. In a sense, therefore, there is a feeling to understand by the Nigerian political class that victory, serious victory, may come from saying, okay, my generation moves on for the sake of the next generation.
Hmm.
That can get in the way of this. Whatever it is, it will be a final phase for Nigeria for a new order to begin. Right or
Amen.
wrong, good or bad, whichever way it goes.
Amen. Wow. That's Prof. Fantastic. Well, you heard from him, I mean, he said it all. It's June 12th. We'll be stupid not to, as a country, not to have learned anything from that election. It's the best election we had. And so it's a wrap there. Prof has been there for us, and he says the truth. There's a lot of work to be done. We're running to a civilian dictatorship. He agrees with what Dele Momodu said. And whatever he's doing with this shadow government is well intended, and he has given examples of where it has been done. It's not what you call an opposition or insurrection or against the government. It's just an avenue for people, not just to critique, to give alternative views. And that's what democracy is all about. Everybody will have their say, even minority will have their say, majority eventually will have their way. Fundamentally, we need to have free and fair elections, and at the end of the day, what does it profit a man, The country is what matters. And to the people in the coalition, yes, they said there are a lot of forces, powerful forces, Atiku, Obi, Amechi, Nasir El-Rufai, and so on and so forth. So what is key for them is for them to let go their pride. If they let go their pride, then the coalition will come into play. It's not about removing the president or opposing the president. The country needs a vibrant opposition, which is almost non-existent today. So, but then we thank Prof for coming. Prof, thank you very much. I think maybe he's joined another meeting or something. So, but we thank he's always there. So it's going to be a wrap there to all our viewers. Thank you so much. It's June 12th in Nigeria, and Happy Democracy Day. It's public holiday, I mean, it was yesterday. Today is Friday, but we still need to acknowledge it one way or the other. It's a wrap. Thank you, everybody. See you again next week, Friday. Bye.